there are ages in which you become more susceptible to things. Like in your early 20s is when everybody, including you, kind of figure out if you're gonna have schizophrenia. Isn't that fucking crazy? And then in your late 30s, particularly if you're a woman, you become the most susceptible to uncovering repressed memories, which terrified the shit out of me, right? Like, if I made it to my late 30s, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want to know anymore. I used to care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't want to know. But there is some truth to that. I almost didn't notice it was happening so subtly. I didn't think I'd forgotten this stuff. Like stuff that happens to you when you're a kid, you think it's normal, so you just forget to mention it. You almost forget that that's not everybody else's childhood. I had to take a bath with my brother till I was 12. I forgot. Who forgets that? But I forgot. We were super poor. We all had to share bath water. Then I remembered, like, of course my parents made us share bath water. Like, my mother was sold for $50 as a slave to a farm, and she wasn't even allowed to take a bath. She had to, like, take one of the horses out of the stable and go to the river and steal a bar of soap and wash her own hair. So of course she's not gonna be like draining the tub after somebody gets out. That's still good water. As long as it's warm, somebody's getting it. And then I remembered another thing. And that's the thing I wanted to tell you guys about tonight.
There are some things about your upbringing that you can't quite shake. Growing up in the deeply religious South, Mandee heard stories about the gifted people. Members of the old generation who could cure a burn or perhaps even chant away a drought. Practitioners of an old blend of religion and folklore and superstition that can only be described as hillbilly magic. This is We Still Like You. I'm Jesse Batend. This week we're traveling down to Louisville, Kentucky to introduce the newest members of the We Still Like You family. A few months ago, we started up a Louisville chapter of the live show, hosted by comedians Mandee, McKelvey, and Chris Vititoe. So this episode, we're welcoming them to the fold. First up, from the repressed memories of Mandee McKelvey, comes this story of meeting someone with the gift.
When I was in high school, I started getting these warts on my hands and a few on my feet. And if you ever went to high school pre-internet, you know the only fucking thing you have to do in high school is stare at your goddamn hands. You know every crevice of your hands and the back of the head of that motherfucker who sits in front of you in class. And that's it. That's all you know. Everybody kept saying, they'll go away. You know, it's a cycle. They have to do their thing and they all go away on their own. It takes a while. And so I waited. But I'm a dumb kid, so I just stare at them and pick at them. I'm 16 years old. I hate myself. I don't want to look at myself. I don't want to look at my gross hands. So after like 2 years, they didn't go away. And my mom finally comes up to me and she's like, hey, I was wondering, do you think you need to go to the doctor? I was like, are you telling me there's a person? There's a person for this? This is not just a thing that you have to do? Like, I'm not just like the tree person now on National Geographic? Like, this is a thing? Like, yes, I'm 16. Don't look at me. Please look at me. Oh, my God. I wish I were dead. Save me, please. I'm 16. Yes. 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 I've grown one boob. One. Please don't look at me. Look at me. And so she goes, okay, well, next week we'll go to the doctor and we'll see what he can do about these warts. I said, great. That's great. Great idea. Glad it took you 2 years to come up with that. So finally, we get in the car and we're driving to the doctor. But on our way to the doctor, we swing by the dry cleaners. I don't think much of it. Mom's always going on errands. I didn't put two and two together that my family is a trailer park family. We don't have dry cleaning. It's just a building I saw every day. So we stop off at the dry cleaner. My mom puts a few things down and she does the transaction and they give her the ticket and she pays the money. And then we leave We start to walk away from the dry cleaner, and on our way out, my mom's just like, thank you so much. Okay, I'll see you Thursday. We'll come pick up those coats, okay? And as we're walking, she turns and just very casually, as she's touching the door of the dry cleaner, goes, you know what's funny? I heard there's this, see y'all later, bye, see you on Thursday. I heard there's this man here. Okay, it was good to see y'all, good. And he like prays off warts. What? The lady behind the counter didn't even blink. She goes, Bob. Nothing. She said nothing else. And a man comes out from behind a curtain. He appears. And I want you to picture Bob, because you would think, given any of that description, you would think something weird. Nothing. Just picture Bob. Just any old Bob you've ever met. Just an old dude, just any dude at any point in history. Just any dude, just over the age of 65, just a Bob. Nothing special about Bob. Bob comes out. He just doesn't say anything. He just presents himself from the curtain. My mom instinctively understands how to speak to Bob. She just points to me like I'm not her child and goes, it's on her. It's on her. To which Bob says, something I don't understand, and go, one thing done was okay. Which my mother translates to mean, go sit in that chair. So I do, because I'm 16, and even though I look and feel and think like an adult, I'm really a fucking 5-year-old to these people, and they don't give a shit how I feel. The Deep South kind of has their own language, and as the generations are getting older, we're speaking more clear English. Now, I understand that I don't technically speak clear English. I know it sounds like I have a mullet stuck in my throat, but like, my mother has her voice, but then the generation before her, you can't understand him. You can't understand Bob. It's just a series of like garbledy-gook and marble mouth and ding-dangs. And my mom's in this in-between generation where she can understand me as she says I speak hoity-toity. She can't speak ding-dangs, but she can understand it. And she could translate between me and Bob. So I go and I sit in the chair. And Bob, who apparently his eyesight was failing him, hands me just a regular old ink pen, right? Just picture like a Bic pen. And through some series of mouth sounds, he tells my mom to tell me to take this ink pen and to circle every wart individually. And I do. And then for every single circle that I make on my hand, Bob takes an index card out of his pocket and he makes a circle for every wart that I've circled on my hands and feet. And then Bob goes off to the corner. And by corner, I don't mean somewhere different. I mean just 5 feet away, just facing a wall where we can see him. And Bob talks to the index card. He just whispers marble mouth to the index card. He didn't need to whisper. I don't know what the fuck Bob is talking about. And then he comes back over, and for the first time ever, I kind of understood a few of the words that Bob said. Bob just goes, nothing gonna happen for 7 days. Then you look down, then they be gone. Nothing happened for 7 days. Look down, they be gone. And my mom said, thank you so much, and goes to reach into her wallet to pull out some random amount of money. To which Bob walks back through the curtain, because even though everybody in this fucking town is poor as shit, apparently offering money for a service like that is an insult. So all I know is Bob has said that in 7 days, I'll look down, I'll forget they're there, and they'll be gone. So immediately I'm like, man, fuck Bob. And fuck you too, Mom. Because here's the thing, this is an uber Christian town, and I understand Louisville is a Catholic town, but I don't mean Catholic, because I'm from a town that thinks that Catholics are not even Christians. I'm from where it's called Southern Baptist Convention. And if you don't know anything about it, just take everything you know about Christianity and combine it with acute mental illness. So, like I was told things at a very early age, like drawing and doodling on my Sunday school pamphlet would send me straight to hell. Things like that. Crazy shit, right? Shit you don't tell a little bitty kid. So I was always in fear of Satan and whatnot. And as I grew up, I started to call bullshit on it. And I stopped going to church. So I was known amongst the town, because it's a very small town, as just being their blasphemous daughter who wasn't saved. And I was an embarrassment, because I was the only child who wouldn't get baptized in the church. I told you that to tell you this. So we're sitting in the chair, and we're sitting in the car going home, and I was like, man, fuck Bob. And fuck you too, Mom. I was like, I've been staring at these things for 2 years. Every second of every day. I'm not going to forget them. I'm not going to forget them for 1 second. I'm not going to forget them for 5 seconds. Like, they're like a weird appendage. They're scabbed. They're gross. They feel bad. They look bad. All I do is stare at them. This is such bullshit. And we go on, and 7 days go by, and I don't really think about it anymore. I've already kind of forgotten Bob. And I'll never forget, I was sitting in economics class, because why? We're all poor. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Like, you wouldn't be a teacher if you knew economics. And so I'm sitting in economics class, and I'm sitting there, and a thought pops into my head. And I realize I hadn't looked at my warts today. And I look down, and they're gone. And I know you don't believe me. And that is correct. You should not believe that. I would not believe that if that had not happened to me. If I watched a video of me telling this story, I'd be watching the video going, shut up, bitch, boo, boo, Mandee, boo, shut up, sit down, that's bullshit. I wouldn't believe it. It had to happen to me, or I wouldn't have believed it. But it happened. And they weren't just invisible. There was scars where they had been. They had already formed little scars all over my hands. I didn't know who to tell or what to do because I lived in that crazy place. But I worked at a grocery store. I worked at my very first job. And I was a cashier at a grocery store. I had a crush on a stalker, this cute kid named Wes. He was so cute. And I had a crush on him because he was the only 16-year-old boy I'd ever met who didn't smell. He seemed to understand hygiene at an early age that 16-year-old boys didn't get. He seemed like a good boy, too, and he really didn't want anything to do with me, so I wanted him all that much more. And so I'm talking to Wes at work, and I told him what had happened. I had these, and as you can see, they're gone. He prayed on a piece of index paper, and I looked down, and they're gone. And Wes says to me this, well, that ain't Christian. I'm sorry, what? Well, that ain't Christian. That's not from God. That's not from Jesus. That's like dark magic. That's some sort of wizardry, some sort of warlock. He real missed opportunity there. Wartlock. I would have gone with Wartlock. Some sort of warlock, some sort of darkness, like from the devil. Oh my God. Because I need you all to understand this. If someone, including me, tells you an old man prayed off my warts, there are only two correct responses. One is, that's amazing, and it is. And the other one is, shut up, boo, bullshit. And that's even better, because that means you have a discerning palate when you're listening to stories. But it is not an option when someone looks at you and says, someone prayed off my warts. It is not an option to say, that's the wrong kind of magic. I believe you. I just believe it's the wrong kind of magic. That is bullshit. And all of a sudden, all of that faith that I hadn't had, that had come back when this man prayed off my warts, went away again immediately. And I looked at Wes and I was like, man, you're lame as shit, Wes. I was thinking about letting you finger me in the stockroom. I'm not gonna fuck you. Fuck you, Wes. And fuck your God. Thank you, Melissa. And I literally just stopped speaking to Wes because I didn't believe in God, but I believed that a man could use God to pray off my warts. But more than anything, I believed that Wes's Christianity was lame as fuck. And that's all I got, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, guys. Let Chris come back up. Aww, thank you. What I never included in the story was that my mother took me there because a different old lady had prayed off my dad's warts when he was a kid. And apparently she did it by wiping a dirty dishcloth on his warts and then burying them and not telling anyone where she buried the dishcloth. And so my mother apparently already knew this was a thing and just like didn't want to let me in on it for 2 years, and then finally just gave up and was like, okay, we'll do the magic. And I have searched my memory for anything that I'm leaving out of the story, and I don't know. I honest to God I hope it was like a miracle. I really do. Like, I genuinely hope that it was a miracle, because they didn't budge for 2 years, and then I looked just like he said, and they went away. And that's the funny thing, like, I don't believe in anything. And I know that this old dude at the dry cleaner prayed off my warts and then died. And now I can't see if that works again. I can't take anyone else to the dry cleaner to see if it works again. But apparently there's like this culture of like old people who have gifts.
Mandee McKelvey. She's one of the 2 co-hosts of our new Louisville live show. Up next, Chris Vititoe gets uncomfortably close to the paranormal. When a loved one passes away, it's perfectly normal to wish you could see them one more time. But what would you actually say if you got the chance? What would you do? In this next story, Chris Vititoe gets a chance to find out.
So this time last year, my mom died. And I was more prepared for that than most people my age, probably because she'd been sick for a long time, but also because she talked about her dead body all the time. Like, she would see an episode of CSI, this one about somebody not being embalmed and being put into a mausoleum, which, if you don't know what a mausoleum is, it's a corpse drawer on the outside. And if you're not embalmed, then all the gases in your body build up and your body explodes inside the mausoleum. And she saw this episode of CSI, and she was just like, I was working at the hospital at the time, and she was just like, buddy, will you ask one of the doctors at work if I'll explode if I'm inside this mausoleum? Because I don't want to be embalmed. I'm like, wait a minute. So you're telling me you want to ask one of the doctors at work? Yeah, they know. I'm like, why don't you just call the cemetery and ask them how people deal with this? Because I think they have a pretty good idea for this, right? She's like, oh, they'll just say anything to get your money, to get you in there. And I was like, look, I don't talk to these doctors as often as you may think I do, and I definitely don't want to open with, hey, is my mom going to explode inside of this mausoleum? You're a practitioner of science. What do you think? I was constantly reminded that she was going to be like dead at some point. So she was constantly doing that. And it got to the point where it was just like a dark sense of humor, and I got used to it and everything. And as often as she would talk about her corpse, I couldn't, when she got sick and she was in the hospital, I couldn't get her to answer a single fucking honest question about, all right, real corpse talk. What do you want to do with your remains? Where do you want to be buried? How do you want to deal with your body? What do you want to do? And she's like, I can't talk about that. Really? Because you talk about it all the time. Nothing. And it wasn't until the last week that she was here on this planet where I can get that information from her. It was down to the wire. And finally, she died, and we are in our house cleaning stuff out. And it was, I don't know if you've ever had to go through this, but it's terrible. Like, it's like you're in a museum of Vititoes. Everything's dusty. You're going through a bunch of shit you forgot about. And at first you feel like a burglar because you're going through every single drawer and every nook and cranny of the closet that you shouldn't be in. And then after like the first week, you're like, I'm not a burglar because burglars don't vacuum. I'm kind of a janitor for her life. You just kind of, every single decision, whether or not you throw it in the garbage, you put it on the street, or you take it home, it's a huge decision. And I felt like shit. I was constantly walking around this house and thinking about how she was when she wasn't sick and she was up to speed and everything. Like, she was a neat freak. When we were kids and we would invite friends over, she would always have one question, like, buddy, Joey's coming over. Is he wild? And we knew what the fuck that meant. We act like we didn't because we had to be like, no, Joey's cool, but we knew what that meant. It meant jumping around, talking loud, jumping on the couch, making the dog puke. And you lied. You're like, no, Joey's totally calm. You think I'm friends with wild kids? No, Joey's cool. And then he would come over, and sure enough, Gertie puked because he jumped on the bed. Everything I don't want to happen happens. You understand? Joey fucking jumped on the bed and Gertie puked. And I had to tell her, look, Joey's wild. I'm sorry. I knew it from the get-go. So I'm walking around this house cleaning up stuff. And it's the last day of cleaning up, and it's been like 2 months. This is a huge house, and she threw away nothing. And it's kind of a creepy day outside. I got a hammer. I'm walking around and I'm just pulling nails out of the wall, and it was the nails that were holding family pictures up. And I just let them drop to the floor. Kind of wild. I didn't pick every nail up immediately. I let them sit there for a while. It was kind of wild. I'm on the second floor. I've got the shop vac out, and I'm vacuuming about all the nails and everything. And on the second floor, I'm kind of in the epicenter of my older room, my brother's old room, my mom's old room, and it just all hits me like how sad this looks from another perspective. This sad, balding fucker up there with his shop vac, vacuuming up nails that used to hold his family pictures. It's so sad. And I didn't feel sorry for myself. What actually happened, what really surprised me, is I felt this really intense fear. And the fear was this anticipation that my mom was going to appear and hug me. And you gotta understand, like, I'm not a superstitious person at all. I don't walk around thinking that ghosts are gonna appear and give me a surprise hug. This is not something that I expect day to day. I never thought about this, but for some reason, the reason why it scared me is because it made sense to me why she would do it. When I think of ghost stories and ghost movies, they don't freak me out because the ghost motives don't creep me out. I'm like, oh, you want revenge? That's not scary. I understand revenge. It's no big deal. I want revenge. I relate to you. But the fact that she could be watching this and feel sorry for me and also like be lonely and want to hug me, it felt too real. I knew that she would truly want this and she would want to comfort me and do it selfishly, even though it was objectively scary to ghost hug somebody out of nowhere. She would totally do that. I mean, especially all this talk about the dead bodies and everything like that. She'd be like, oh, come on, buddy. I know I'm ghastly. And she would just give me a hug. I wouldn't want it. I mean, you would think that in your own house, you could just appear in whatever ghastly form you want at any time of the day and just hug somebody because it's your fucking house. But it doesn't work like that. It's scary. It's objectively scary. So, me, my rational self, I turned off the shop vac, and I felt this hair stand up in the back of my neck. I felt my mouth go really dry and tingly, like I was going to puke. And it was just intense anticipation and fear of my mom. for one to give me a hug, which has never scared me once in my entire life. And I'm ashamed to admit that I scurried down the stairs holding the hammer pretty tight. I don't know, in case the ghost of my mom showed up. Just treat her totally like a ghoul in her own house. Like I'm just gonna go straight for the head and just bust it wide open. So here's somebody who doesn't think about superstition at all. If she did appear to me, she would be like a ghost pioneer. She would be the first one to break through from the land of the dead to the land of the living. And she would be greeted by her only living son, hitting her fucking head with a hammer. It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild.
Vititoe, ladies and gentlemen.
That does it for this episode of We Still Like You. If you enjoyed the show this week, please do us a favor and share it with someone who you think will like it. Tag a friend who believes in magic, tag someone who's a non-believer. Our goal is to share the love and share the shame as far as it'll go. If you or someone you know can pray off warts, we really, really, really want to talk to you. Just send us an email at westilllikeyou@gmail.com. And that is also how you can be a future storyteller on a future episode of We Still Like You. Just send us a quick synopsis of your story of shame, and we'll get in touch. So until next time, I'm Jesse Batend, and thank you for listening.
We Still Like You is produced by Tyler Snodgrass, Dan Sheehan, Danny Gallegos, Shannon Knoll, and J. Michael Osborne, our resident live artist. The podcast is produced by Jesse Batend and Sam Haas. That's it, right? That's all I need to say?